Hey guys, welcome back to another episode where this episode is potentially going to be a little bit different. I've been called by God and by many, many people in my life to share my testimony, and it's something that's very near and dear and important to my heart. And I decided to take some time to sit down and to share from my heart challenges, life changes, and quite frankly, my calling and coming home to God. And it's something I'm proud of. And it's also something I was scared to share. And even in this episode, you're going to hear me facing my own insecurities and my own doubts about how I tell the story, how I share my testimony. But this has been on my heart to share for a very, very long time. And after getting interviewed on a couple of podcasts and being asked, so have you shared that anywhere? Have you shared that anywhere? I took the call and I decided to record it. And so I'm just going to ask and pre-handle this, that this was really raw for me, really emotional, but also speaks to the power of our journeys as humans and entrepreneurs, that we're not the labels that people put on us. We're not the version of ourselves that we were yesterday. We have an unlimited page or book of blank pages ahead of us. And our job is to pick up a pen and write whatever story we want. And I'm proud of my story. I'm proud of my life. I'm proud of the mistakes that I've made. I'm proud of the lessons that I learned as I continue to integrate to be a better man, a better entrepreneur, a better coach, a better father, a better partner, a better ex-husband, a better friend, and a better anything that I can do to improve and bring love into this world and bring connection into this world and to bring possibility into this world. And so today's episode is straight from the heart. And so I ask that if it touches you in any way, if it resonates with you in any way, that you just please reach out and let me know. Sometimes it feels like an echo chamber recording podcasts, especially ones alone. And I know you're listening, and I'm only as powerful as the connection of this community. And I love every single one of you with every single part of my heart. And so I thank you in advance. And without further ado, let's get into the podcast. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George show. And today's episode is going to be a little bit different. And if you're listening to this, you can probably already hear the emotion in my voice. And if you're watching this, you can see it in my face, because I have been called for quite a couple of months to share my testimony and to share my testimony of God and my life. And it's been ruminating, and I've been writing it down, and I've been taking notes. And then in the last couple of days, I've been surrounded by some incredibly influential people that have all led me to hit record on this podcast and to share my story. And it's very emotional and it's very amazing. And I'm just riddled with love from God. And I wanted to share. And I realized that there's no perfect way to share except to share from my heart. And so I'm going to spend the next 20 to 30 minutes telling you my story. And my hope and intention is that this supports you, that this lands for you, and that you can feel the love of God, and you can feel my love for you, and you just get to feel a little bit of the love that I have felt. And I don't even know where to begin except to give some context. And so for those of you who know me, who have listened to this podcast, and maybe for those who are finding this podcast for the first time, it feels like for 40 years of my life, 39 to be exact, I was fighting a battle alone and not acknowledging the teammate that I had in my corner the entire time. And so I had a rough childhood with lots of abuse and physical abuse and drug abuse and sexual abuse, and then led to a career in the Marine Corps for 13 years where I basically experienced a lot of trauma, a lot of PTSD, and gave myself a lot of credit for making it out without ever realizing that God had had my back the entire time. And I've even gone through seasons as an entrepreneur of being accused of having a giant ego, or being new age, or struggling to articulate the thoughts and feelings that I was having, wondering why I felt like a monster, or I felt like a bad man, but yet I always felt this call to be here. And the one thing that I will say to start this is that I was never trying to run from God or to disprove God's existence. I was running towards him and looking for him everywhere. And it took 39 years in my life for me to just slow down, stop, and look up and realize that he was here the entire time. And I've wrestled with this a lot in my life. I've studied things. I've looked for meaning. I've grabbed labels. And if you've been around me long enough, you've heard me use the word universe and God and source, and even say, I met God on ayahuasca, and it was a woman, and it was this, and it was that, and it was just lost. I was so lost and so scared and really struggling with faith and surrender until I finally found my way home. And the way in which I found my way home can only be described as divine. And I feel like it would take me an entire book to label every synchronicity, every divine moment, every reminder, every part and piece. But in retrospect and looking back, God has had his hand on my shoulders and his arms wrapped around me with love, with so many incredible people in my life the entire time, just praying and holding space for me to find my way home. And that's how I get to today. And I've shared parts and pieces of this story over the last couple of months on podcasts and with interviews. And it's been very, very powerful and very, very sobering. And so I wanted to take it into account and share the last year of my life. And so this all started when my soon-to-be ex-wife, Lindsay, and I, who I love dearly as a human and as a person, and as the mother of my children, decided that we were going to consciously uncouple. And in that process, everything that I'd ever worked for in my life, every place that I hid, the money, the businesses, the cars, the houses, the status, were all removed until I was left with just myself. And there were hundreds of moments of surrender and fear that led me to faith. And it all started when I flew to Bali last year with my incredible friend Julia Guerreri, and we co-hosted a women's retreat in Bali. And when I was in Bali, we ran this women's retreat. And to say that I've experienced more love than I'd ever felt in my life is an understatement. But for 5 days in Bali, we had 15 of the most incredibly powerful, profound, entrepreneurial women together, and I was the only man there. And for 3 days, I could not describe it then, but I can describe it now. I felt the love of God. I felt this presence, this acceptance, this unwavering love of God that I couldn't articulate, that I was having trouble collapsing, but it was magical. Every single one of these moments. And on the flight home, which took about 3 days, I was boarding a flight at 1 a.m. and I saw this elderly gentleman named Hugh. I now know his name and we have connected, struggling with his luggage. He was, I think, 83 years old and nobody was helping him. So I said, "Excuse me, sir, can I help you with your luggage?" And he said, "That would be amazing." So I grab his luggage and we walk on the plane. And sure as not, I put his luggage up and he ends up in the seat next to me on a 5-hour flight. And he is just asking me the most incredible questions about life, about meaning. I'm sharing about my relationship with God and the universe and all these parts and pieces. And at the end of it, he said, "Can I pray for you?" And I said, "I would love that." And he prayed for me. He gave me his card and we went to connect. And I said, "I will reach out and connect with you." And in typical egoic, fear-based fashion, I put his card in my backpack and I didn't think much of it. And that was September, 14 months ago. I come home, I keep navigating in business, rebuilding the business, focusing on the right things, focusing on my family, healing, supporting Lindsay and the kids, growing, having deep conversations with my incredible CEO, Ashley, but really feeling like in the darkest parts of my life. A lot of doubt, a lot of insecurity, a lot of fear, a lot of overwhelm, like it felt like death around me, death of status, death of ego, death of all of these things. And not once did I ever grab that card and reach out. And in January, of all things, I took a trip. My backpack that had the card in it got completely soaked in water. And I opened my backpack and the card was ruined. I didn't have his contact info. I didn't know how to get a hold of him. And to be radically honest, I never had the intention to. And I even told myself in that moment when that happened, I was like, I'm never going to talk to this man again. This is what I get. He's never going to get a hold of me. He told me he wasn't into technology. And I had like a weeping moment, and I was really sad about it. And I realized that I should have followed through, and I should have booked this call. And surprisingly enough, I come to the office the next day and I see his name in my calendar. And after my backpack flooded and I lost his card, he found my contact info and booked a call on my calendar for 15 minutes. And that 15-minute call turned into a 3.5-hour call. And at the beginning of the call, I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, I know you believe in God, but I think you might be worshiping the wrong ones. And basically spoke into me for 3.5 hours and had me in tears and on my knees. And that was February 6th. And during that call, I'll never forget, I asked him one question. I said, sir, thank you for this. I'm feeling something I've never felt before. What Bible do I start with? And he looked me dead in the eye and he said, that's between you and God. Only he can tell you what Bible to start with or where you begin, but I feel like it's time that you start looking. Never pressured me, never did anything, just kind of led me. And it was a beautiful cold day in Montana. And I drove home from the office. And I had just gotten back from a trip. And I got home and I was seeing my son. And he's like, Dad, you'll never believe this. I went to the store earlier and he was at Murdoch's. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, I got you something. I said, you got me something? He said, yeah, I was walking around the store and there was a guy handing stuff out and I got one for you. And he grabs me by the hand, walks me into his room, and my incredible 7-year-old son handed me a pocket New Testament that day. And so I picked it up and I just started reading it. And I didn't know what to make of it. I didn't really understand it, but I just kept reading it and reading it and reading it. And over the next couple of days, I was very emotional. I was very upset. And it was like God sent a ton of angels into my life. And so I had a massage scheduled with my incredible massage therapist, who him and I had never talked about God or spirituality. But I had seen quotes on his wall and I'd seen a Bible on his desk. And I walked into his office and I said, hey, Bradley, this is going to sound really, really crazy, but things seem really dark right now. And I'm really struggling a lot. And I've never asked this of anybody before, but I had a question. And he said, yeah, of course. And I said, would it be okay if you prayed for me? And he looked me dead in the eye and had like a tear down his cheek. And he said, I'd be honored to pray for you. And I'll never forget sitting in this chair. I was sitting in a foldable chair. And he had me put my head down. And he put his hands on my shoulders. And he just started to pray for me. And he knew nothing of my life, nothing about the uncoupling, nothing about my fears, about my PTSD, none of that. And he just started praying for me. And he prayed for me for 30 minutes. And he spoke every single thing that I had been experiencing, feeling, and challenging. And I wept. And I mean, I wept for 30 minutes to the point where there was a puddle on the carpet. And in this weeping, I'd never felt so loved and so safe and so seen and so held in my life. And he prayed over me. I thanked him. I hugged him. We did my massage and then I left. And 2 days later, I got on a flight to go keynote in New Jersey with my brother, Nick Daughtry. And I don't remember the specific date, but I remember I brought my New Testament with me. I was reading it. And I remember saying, before I went up to speak for the first time ever, I prayed before I spoke. And I didn't know how to pray. I thought I was doing it wrong. I thought I was struggling. And I said, God, I want to honor you. I want to know you. I want to know that you exist. And I need some help. And I gave this incredible talk. And it was received so well. And I had somebody come up to me after the talk and say, hey, I can feel the love of God in your heart, but I feel like you're surrounded by evil. Can I pray for you? And I was like, holy moly, yes, please. And they recommended this book to me. And the book was called The Believer's Authority. And they're like, I really recommend you read this. And so on the flight home, I read this book. This is sometime in the middle of February. When I got home, I read this book and I completed this book in like a day and a half. And one of my things that you've heard me talk about a lot is stillness and space. And the reason that that exists is because I had a shaman in Costa Rica when I went to sit with ayahuasca for the first time who said, George, I will not let you sit with this medicine because you don't have a relationship with God. And I was angry and upset. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, you've never been quiet enough to hear God's whispers. I need you to go sit with yourself until you can answer this question and say, what is the purpose for your life? And this was 8 years ago. But since that moment, I've been obsessed with having a stillness practice and quieting my thoughts and being able to exist with myself. And one of my favorite places and my safest places is the bathtub or a shower. And one of the things I do in my practice is I sit on the floor of the shower with the water rushing over me and I pray. And so I read this book, The Believer's Authority. And I had felt the love of God. I had felt this presence. I had felt this safety. But at the same time, I had felt all this darkness and these evil thoughts and all these things that were just consuming my brain. And I went into the shower the morning after I got home. And I got down on my knees. And I started actively praying. And I'll never forget what I said. I said, I demand in the name of Jesus Christ that you remove all evil, all darkness, and all negative thoughts out of my life. And I started weeping. And the weeping turned into dry heaving, and the dry heaving turned into vomiting. And this went on for about 45 minutes, and it felt like I was having evil removed from my body in the shower. And I was bawling and bawling and bawling. And this went on that day, and I had to get out of the shower to get my son ready for school. And so I took a shower that night, and I did the same thing. And the next day, and this went on for 7 or 8 days in a row. And I'll never forget the last day because I got down on my knees and I prayed again. And when that water was hitting my body, it felt like a jolt of loving electricity had shot through my whole body. And like 39 years of darkness had been erased. And I stepped out of that shower feeling like I'd lost 1,000 pounds and like I could see the world differently. Still didn't know what to do, just kept reading my New Testament, just kept kind of navigating, but feeling lost, like I genuinely felt lost. And I just remember sitting there on my couch saying like, God, I need help. I don't know how to do this. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. And out of the blue, I get a text message. And the text message is from my dear friend, Jake Herbert. And Jake shot me a video message and said, hey, brother, I've been thinking about you. I miss you. I love you. How are you? And I responded and I told him what was going on. And he said, we have a call today with our Bible study, and I'd love to invite you. That's why I was texting you. And so I jump on this call in the Men of Faith group under Larry Hagner's The Dad Edge Alliance. And I get surrounded by men of faith. And they speak into me, they breathe into me, and it was just like another divine sign. And so I stay in this group, and I'm reading my Bible, and I'm doing all of these things, and I'm still wrestling. I'm still wrestling with faith back and forth. And I'm like, all of it's right in front of me. All of it's right in front of me. Like, what do I do? How do I do this? And it was more of me trying to control and try to have the answer and try to have the solution. And then one of my dear friends, one of my closest friends, was battling stage 4 cancer. And I didn't know what to do. And my best friend, who might be listening to this, TJ Fry, who is a gift from God in my life, is one of my neighbors up the street. And I remember seeing my friend and feeling helpless and feeling like I don't know what to do. And I called TJ. And he said, why don't we get together and pray? And I said, I would love that, man. I don't really know how, but let's do it. And so TJ comes over. At this point, I had gone to the store and I had bought a Bible that I felt called to buy. And TJ and I spent an hour together in prayer. And one of my favorite passages, and I can't quote it yet, is that when two or more of you have met or are meeting in my name, in witness of my name, I am present. And I started praying with TJ, and we had deep, profound conversations, and we were praying and praying and praying. And he looked me dead in the eye and he said, "Hey man, like, my faith is important to me." And I said, "Mine too." And I said, I've never chosen to be baptized. I was baptized as a kid, but it wasn't by choice. And he said, "Me neither." And he said, "How would you like it if we rebaptized each other?" And I said, "I would absolutely love that." And so we made a decision together. We met in April in a cold mountain lake in Montana. My son came out with me. His wife and his daughter came out with me. And on that day in April, I recommitted my life to Christ, and I gave my life to God. And my brother in arms, my best friend, my closest friend, baptized me, and I baptized him back. And since that time in April, we're now 5-6 months later, my life has been the most beautiful life that I've ever lived. It's surrounded by love. It's surrounded by acceptance. It's surrounded by joy. And I keep having this gift of looking back at my life and realizing all the places God has protected me, God has held me, God has loved me, and God has surrounded me by angels. Ashley, my CEO, being one of them, who has been by my side for the last couple of years, navigating darkness with me and praying for me and praying for me and praying for me until I finally came home. And so many incredible things have transpired in my life. And so many things that I can just only give full credit to God, and thinking about my career and thinking about my accomplishments and thinking about the things that I've navigated, knowing and seeing now crystal clearly that God was there the entire time, except my ego and fears were fighting it because I refused to have faith. And I've been surrounded by love and surrounded by God and surrounded by nothing but the gift of the Holy Spirit and the greatest sacrifice that anybody ever has made, which is Jesus just begging me to come home and to give my glory to him and to put my ego aside and my insecurities aside and my fears aside. And it's been one of the most profound, beautiful, and also scary experiences of my life, because my entire life I had to survive. I had to do it on my own, so I thought. I had to have the credit, so I thought. I had to have the answers, so I thought. And he's been there loving me and putting the most beautiful people in front of me and the most beautiful of angels to protect me the entire time. And the reason I'm recording this podcast today is it's been on my heart. And you guys have heard me say this before, and I'll say it again, is that I forget that when I ask God to move mountains, I wake up with a shovel. And it's been a season of reminding me that God belongs at the forefront of every single thing I do, in the highs, in the lows, in the in-between, and that all glory goes to him. And that genuinely, when I have faith and walk in honor of his name and walk in honor of his teachings, that he will provide and he will take care of me. And in the last 6 months, there have been people, partnerships, relationships, friends that almost feel impossible that they could have been in, or at the timing that they came in, or the way in which they love me perfectly, or know when to text me, or know what to say. And I'm home now. And even as I record this, I'm having thousands of moments pop into my brain that I used to be like, oh, coincidences are just us getting out of God's way. Or, oh, well, that was just me setting my intention. Or, of course they would happen right now. It's an accident, but it's also divinely timed. And it's also perfect. And it's also God-led and divinely led. that truthfully the biggest struggle I have now is articulating into words the love that I feel in my body, the level of home that I feel in my body, the level of breakthroughs that I feel in my body. And for those that have been around me enough, you know that I used to swear all the time. I had the worst coping habits and the worst addictive behavior, and God removed that out of my life. And one of the hardest things to hear that I'm so grateful to hear now is every day I get messages from people who are like, brother, we always felt your heart. We always could feel your love. We always knew you did things for the right reason and that you were just lost or that you were scared. And we've just been praying for you and praying for you and praying for you. And if I had a list of all of them, there'd be 1,000 on this podcast right now that have loved me, that have supported me, that have stood for me, that could see it. And I couldn't see it. Because I was convinced that I had to fight everything on my own. That I didn't deserve love. That I was defined by all of my mistakes in the past. That I had to do it alone like I did my whole life. And I'll say what I'm about to say. I feel like even my teachings and my content and the models I teach were all created by God. But they were created for me to embody, for me to walk through, for me to learn, and for me to experience. Because it feels like God created a safety net around me, and I was the only one who refused to fall back into it. And I'm so honored to be home. And I'm so grateful for every one of you. Ashley, Carrie, Joanna, TJ, Scott, Joni, Stephanos, Mike, Michelle Dillard, the thousands of other people, Mark Casto, who I had a call with last week, Eric Allen, who I had a call with last week, Jake, Larry, Rex, like every single one of you, like I have thousands of you to name, that have all loved me unconditionally, that have supported me, and most importantly, prayed for me to come home. And I'm even having insecurities right now recording this, that it isn't perfect and that it isn't succinct and that I'm not telling the story right. But the truth is that I just have so much love in my heart for people, for every person I connect with, for every person that I coach, for everyone that I help. And I feel like love is the answer. Like relationships really matter. And my whole life I've struggled with, why does my heart so big but my head so dark? And I don't struggle with that anymore. Like I just have this undeniable faith in God and in love and in humanity that we can bring love and we can all win. And it's definitely a journey. And it's humbling. And it's beautiful. And I wanted to share it. Because I've spent my life trying to find every answer, studying every book, reading every book, breath work, plant medicine, therapy modalities, Carl Jung, Vedanta, like every single thing that I could try to find, where I could try to logically convince myself that there was something greater, and the biggest challenge I had was traveling the distance between my head and my heart, because my heart knew the entire time. And in being honest, like, I'm scared to post this, but I'm going to do it anyways, because God put it on my heart. And I'm scared that this message might be confusing, and I'm scared that it won't make sense. And all of those fears are okay. But I can feel the love of God everywhere in my life. And I have nothing but gratitude for every single part of my story. And I can look back at my entire life, and I can see how God was perfectly and clearly teaching me how to be this man, and helping me be the father that I am and that I'm proud of, and the business coach that I am and that I'm proud of, and the teammate that I am and that I'm proud of, and the partner and the ex-husband, and just standing for love. And I feel like such a little baby in my faith. And I feel humbled daily, knowing that I'll never measure up to a sinless man who's named Jesus, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life honoring him and glorifying him and thanking him and giving him credit for every single thing that's in front of me. And if you're still listening to this, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being on this journey with me. Thank you for listening to my podcast. Thank you for loving me with your time, with your energy, and with your presence. And there are so many of you that I need to thank and get to thank. And I will spend the rest of my life thanking you with love and with service and with gratitude and with your name and acknowledging you. But it felt like now was the time to share. And I'm excited to continually share my testimony, to continually walk this path. Because the biggest mistake that I've ever made in my life was taking credit for any of the things that I achieved. Because yes, I did walk them, but God gave them all to me. And I am so humbled by that, and so proud of that, and so grateful for that I am who I am, and I see the world in the way I see it, and I'm surrounded by all the incredible people that I am because of God. And so if you're listening to this, you know who you are. You know who you are in my life. And I love you to absolute pieces. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for every one of you taking the time to listen. I'm grateful for every one of you loving me as I am, wholly and completely as I am. And I'm going to continue to walk this walk, and I'm going to continue to help however I can help and serve however I can serve. I'm going to continue to allow grace for myself and humanity for myself. And I just thank you. Like, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. And wherever you are, whoever you are, whether this is the first time you've ever heard me or you've been here since day one, I just want you to know that you are loved, and that I love you, and that God loves you, and that you matter, and that your voice matters, and your view of the world matters, and what you do matters. And I thank you. Thank you for being in this game with me. Thank you for being on this earth with me. And thank you for playing this game of life together, because I genuinely believe that all of us together get to bring love and God back to the forefront of everything that we do, to have beauty in this world, have love in this world, and to create deep, meaningful relationships that matter and glorify Him in the process. And so I love you to pieces. I appreciate you to pieces. I don't really know how to wrap this show. I think I hit most of it, but I'll leave you with this. There will probably be a point where I share every ounce of this in my life, from my first interactions with God, being on deployment, being in foreign countries, feeling like I was never going to make it, feeling like there's no way that'll happen. But my heart kept guiding me in a certain direction. And every time I followed that direction, it's only led to the most beautiful gifts that I could have never imagined, no matter how dark it seemed. And it was God guiding me the entire time. And so I thank you for being here. I love you. If you want to shoot me a DM on Instagram, if we can connect on any of this, if I can support you in any way, if you want to send words my way, prayers my way, Bible verses my way, encouragement, ask questions, or any of it, I welcome all of it. I love you. I will be here for the long foreseeable future, continuing to do what I do. And I'm humbled by you. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for our community, and I'm grateful to even have the opportunity to do this. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being in my world. I love you all to pieces. God bless. I'll either see you in the next episode or you'll hear me in your earballs. But either way, that's where we wrap today's show.